Sports Avenue Twisted Podcast. Rob and Rocky talks everything sports.
Welcome to another edition of the Sports Avenue Twisted Podcast. We have a guest in here who's a contributor for Jets Baseball Media, and also he's the founder of FBCReports.com, and he's based about covering the Reds. Mason Linken, welcome. This is the first time you've been here, so it's awesome to have you on. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it, and I'm excited to talk about all things Cincinnati Reds today.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Like Rocky said, thanks for joining us. And yeah, man, you guys got a young, exciting team, so we're excited to learn more about the Cincinnati Reds and talk about them a bit. So thanks, man.
All right, let's get this thing started here. So let's talk about the team right now. And right now, they're fifth place in the NL Central. I mean, it's probably one of the most surprising divisions in baseball. But Mason, what were your expectations heading into the season, especially a team that was a playoff team last year?
Yeah, so heading into the season, I viewed the Reds as a young and hungry team. They have a lot of up-and-coming talent. Their rotation, obviously, before the injury news came out, was headlined by Hunter Green and Andrew Abbott, who were both some of the best pitchers that you could have frontlining your rotation. Lots of talent there. But with the Brewers atop the Central and the Cubs making some big splashes this offseason, I expected the Reds to come into 2026 still as a wild card team. I always envisioned them making the playoffs, but the NL Central is just a hard division to topple.
So what were your biggest surprises and disappointments so far in the first couple months of the season?
I have to say, my biggest surprise so far has been Nathaniel Lau and his bounce back campaign so far. You know, last year he was kind of a journeyman with the Red Sox. He didn't really find much success. But this year, I think he's had just under 160 at-bats to this point. He's running a 376 xWOBA, which is in the 90th percentile. He's got an 836 OPS, which is one of the highest marks in Cincinnati's lineup right now. And he's been a really solid contributor, especially over the past month. I'd say my biggest disappointment so far would have to be Eugenio Suarez. And last offseason, I felt like he slipped through the cracks, only inking a one-year deal for $15 million. But the front offices must have seen something that we as fans didn't, because he's been pretty abysmal to start the season. I just finished a write-up the other day on him. He's at best average in two categories. That would be barrel rate and launch angle sweet spot. The rest, he's been one of the worst in the league. He's hitting just 212 right now. He's striking out the most he ever has, which is crazy because he usually runs a 30% strikeout rate, which is one of the highest in the league. But his inability to be a staple for that lineup has been one of the biggest reasons why the Reds have been slipping as of late.
Were those two the only two that you could think of? Was there anybody else that you thought that was a surprise or a disappointment to start the season, or do those two names come in mind?
Those two are the most prominent, but also coming to mind is Nick Lodolo. He came into the season coming off of a year where he had a 3.33 ERA and 156.2 innings last year. And right now, he's running a 6.12 ERA. So it's like two sides of a coin. You couldn't get much worse than that after coming off a great season. And he wasn't really a regression candidate either. Last year, he only walked 4.8% of batters. He was above average in strikeout rate and whiff rate. He got a lot of chases. He also got a relatively high amount of ground balls. And then this year, everything's just gone out the window. It's like he's a whole new pitcher. And he's had his injury troubles in the past. Something could still be lingering with him, but I haven't really seen anything too clear-cut with him that's explained that shift in his abilities.
Next question. That's probably going to lead me up to the next question here. So let's talk about this offense in this team, and they're tied for eighth in home runs right now. And but if you look at everything else, like if you look at hits, they're 26. Batting average is below the bottom in baseball. WRC plus is below the bottom as well. It's the offense has been Jekyll and Hyde. Like if you look at the series against the Mets, like they put up some crooked numbers, and then yesterday it was like a dud. Like talk about what's this offense is about, because it seems like it's such an enigma so far for the Reds.
Right. So when I took a look at their offense over the course of this past week, it was interesting because outside of Ellie De La Cruz, who's out injured right now, so he's not contributing, they've had 5 hitters with an OPS higher than 700. So that's barely league average, and half their lineup isn't reaching that point.
Mhm.
In those 5 hitters is Dane Myers and Nathaniel Lowe, both who have had less than 160 at bats. And at this point in the season, a lot of the main staples in the lineup are nearing 250, some even higher. So they've had less playing time. They haven't really contributed as much as you would like to see them. There are a lot of players in the lineup who are rotating in and out because they're average defensively and they're just not doing anything with their bat. Coming to mind is Tyler Stevenson. He's been switching on and off with Jose Trevino, and neither of them have really found their groove at the plate. Matt McLean has struggled to start the season, and I want to talk about this later, but he does have some redeeming qualities, but he's running an OPS in the 660s right now. Sal Stewart, he's one of the hitters with an OPS above 700, but he's been on a slide since March and April. Blake Dunn, you have to run him out there because he's slightly above average defensively, but he just hasn't done anything with the bat. And like I mentioned, Eugenio Suarez, there's not really a better alternative to put in the designated hitter spot, but he just hasn't been the staple that Nick Krall and the Reds were expecting when they signed him this offseason.
You mentioned Eugenio Suarez, and he was supposed to be one of those big bats in the middle of your lineup. He was recently activated a few weeks ago, and just how important would it be to the offense to get his bat going? Because we all know what he can do with the bat when he gets that ball in the air. So, especially in that ballpark. So, just how important is it to get him going, and what can he be to this offense if he does?
Yeah, it could be absolutely game changing. I mean, we all saw it the other day. His 2-homer performance, the grand slam. I think it came in the second inning. When you get that from Suarez, who in the past 3 years has been a perennial slugger, I think he's hit 101 home runs from 2023 to 2025, which was the 8th most in the league. If you could have that guy in your lineup propelling your power numbers even further, that would be like revolutionary. The Reds, even though they're in last place, they're only 3 games under 500 right now. Like nothing is over for them. They're 3 games back of a wild card spot. So Eugenio Suarez waking up would be really pivotal. I mean, the past few games, I felt personally that he looked more comfortable in the box. He does this lean over the plate with his chest when he's loading, and it's looked like that's allowed him to get more in his hips over the past week. Before that, he looked a little uncomfortable. He was kind of leaning back more than he was used to. And I don't really have access to metrics or anything that will tell us how much he's doing that, but just from the eye test, it looks like there's something changing. And yeah, the last week or two, he's been much better. Still not great, but better than what he has been for the start of the season.
Talk about JJ Bleday. What a story for him, and watching him in Vanderbilt and being with the Marlins and the Athletics, and they giving up on him relatively quick, and now he seems like he has found a home for the Reds. And if you look at his numbers right now, it's all career numbers, and I think it was always about opportunity. I mean, Vanderbilt guys always flourish well, especially when they have one of the best baseball programs in baseball play. Like, what has worked for him? Like, Is he at the point that he's finally getting the opportunity that he's supposed to have in the past?
Yeah, so Blade has been one of my favorite success stories this year, as you mentioned. Like, he's finally getting his opportunity with the Reds. The thing that sticks out to me the most when I look at his profile is his pull air percentage, how much he's hitting the ball to the pull side. Um, and this year he's pulling the ball in the air 31.3% of the time, which, if you aren't familiar, is a crazy high number. If you pull up Baseball Savant and look at his hit spray chart, all of his extra base hits, with the exception of one double to center field, are to the pull side. That's where he generates his most power, and that's why he's been able to hit 13 home runs so far and be perhaps the Reds' most impactful hitter so far this season. He's got a 939 OPS right now, 572 slugging percentage. He's walking a crazy high amount too. He ranks in the 91st percentile in that aspect. And yeah, there's just a ton of red on his Baseball Savant page. It seems like everything's going right for him right now. And in the past month, he had a little bit of a week-long span where he kind of was on a slide, but he's right back to normal right now. His past few games have been pretty good, and he's been way more than the Reds could have asked for. I think way more than anyone expected coming into the season, given his history.
One of my favorite players in baseball is actually Sal Stewart, and what you've got there in him, and he's having a rookie of the year type season. Like you said, he has struggled of late, but overall, 14 home runs, 252 average with 47 ribbies, and 805 OPS with 11 stolen bases. So just talk about him a little bit and give us kind of his profile and like where's the ceiling lie with this kid?
So Stewart has been one of my favorite hitters as a minor leaguer, especially coming off his brief stint in the majors last year. I think he had something like 50 at bats, hit 5 homers, and ran a ridiculous WRC plus for a rookie. And this year in March and April, it looked like he was going to continue that dominance. He was really good coming out of the gates. In the first month of the season, he had a 400 WOBA, 152 WRC plus, 943 OPS, and he was a hitter that the Reds thought they could rely on, and he still is. Even with his struggles, by no means is he bad. He's still well above average, just 22. There's a lot that's going to go right for him in his career. But what stands out to me looking at his profile, firstly, is that after March and April, his strikeout rate went up 4 to 6%, depending if you're looking on May to June. So to start the season, he was striking out 17.9% of the time. And in this month, from June 1st to June 18th, he's striking out 23.1% of the time. And even with that increase, he's been just below league average, a 94 WRC plus in the month. But there's a lot more that the Reds could get out of his bat. And he's kind of the opposite of J.J. Bleday when you look at his page, because he's not pulling the ball in the air nearly as much as he should be. Right now, he's pulling the ball 14.2% of the time. He's hitting it to the pull side in the air. And that's a stark contrast to what he was doing last year in his brief major league stint, where we saw him pulling the ball 30% of the time in the air. So I don't know what's caused that change, if it's an approach thing, something he worked on in the offseason with the Reds coaching staff. But that's the quickest fix or the easiest way to unlock more of those hard hit pull side baseballs. His homer numbers will be higher hitting it to the pull side, and he's always barreled the ball at a high rate. Right now, he ranks in the 91st percentile in barrel rate. He hits the ball hard, 90.7 average exit velocity. So he's a really exciting hitter who hasn't quite unlocked his ceiling, I guess you could say. I think he's well off of that. He could be a perennial power hitter with the right coaching staff.
Do you think Chris Valaika and Will Remillard has done enough for this offense to step up, and if there's always room for improvement, which obviously there is, right, for any organization. But
Right.
how do you look at the coaching staff working with these players?
Yeah, so looking in from the outside, there's a lot left to be desired with the Reds offense. As I mentioned, they have 5 hitters with an above average OPS right now. But you have to wonder if it's the Reds themselves that helped Blade unlock his potential, or if that was an outside organization, like Driveline, perhaps. I'm not too up to date with where he trained in the offseason, but I mean, Valleca, it seems like he's done a solid job, but there's a lot left to be desired. I don't think that the Reds would be hurting themselves if they used a different approach or a different philosophy in the coming months. I mean, it's not something you really want to experiment with mid-season, but I mean, if you look at their minor league system and the hitters coming through, they don't really have many top 30 prospects that are position players. It's mostly pitchers. And the
Right.
position players, too, most of them are struggling. So it might not be on Valleca and his assistant hitting coaches, but a larger organizational philosophy that's causing some sort of disconnect with what the approach needs to be and actually implementing it in gameplay.
Let's talk about the rotation here, and I thought this rotation could have been very interesting so far. I mean, even with Hunter Green being out, which we'll get to later in this episode, but talk about the rotation where it stands right now, because Chase Burns looks like he's one of the best pitchers in the NL, if not in baseball. You got Andrew Abbott, who was an All-Star last year, and he's been steady. Nick Lodolo. I know Rob's one of his favorite pitchers out there with Lodolo, and the stuff is there. He just can't stay healthy. And then you got Brady Singer and Rhett Lauder in the rotation to round up. Like, how do you look at the rotation so far, and how do you emphasize it?
Right. As you mentioned, Chase Burns is one of the best baseball pitchers in baseball right now, period. He's done everything asked of him and more. He looks like the guy that the Reds drafted, the electric college pitcher. And last year, even though his ERA was higher than we would have liked, all the underlying metrics showed that he would be that guy. And it looks like he's here to stay. He's one of the most exciting pitchers. 201 ERA right now. He's struck out 95 batters in 80.2 innings pitched. Like, there's not really much better you can get unless you're Jacob Mizurowski, who's another
Right.
crazy young pitcher.
Unbelievable.
Andrew Abbott is, I think, the most interesting pitcher in the Reds rotation right now. Like you mentioned, he was an All-Star last year. Um, he was one of their best pitchers last year. He was their ace. He ran a 2.87 ERA. He had a 17 pitching run value, which was in the 90th percentile. And he's always been a guy who outperformed his expected stats or underlying metrics. That's just who he is, because historically, um, he limits hard hit rate. He limits average exit velo. But this year, he's looked different. And I'm grappling with the idea of if it's different in a bad way. I wrote about him a little while back when he had a 5 ERA early into the season, something like that. And now he's down to 3.95. But looking at his starts, he's not striking guys out, really. 58 and nearly 80 innings pitched. It's a 16.9 strikeout rate in the 15th percentile. He's not really getting ground balls at a high rate that you would see from a pitcher overperforming his underlying metrics. Like, it just seems to me that he's had a really lucky stretch. And not to say that he's always been lucky. I think something's going on with him this season. If you look at all his percentiles, this year his hard hit rate has risen about 5%, which seems like a marginal increase, but it's a lot for a pitcher. And that's led to a lot of extra base hits against him. that hard contact is harder for fielders to limit damage to. So, I mean, it's not really clear to me what's different with him. His pitch usage seems relatively similar to years past. He's using the sweeper more, the changeup less, but not in a substantial way. So I think he'll be a really interesting guy to follow the rest of the year. And hitters are pulling the ball less against him, so that could be part of why he's been so lucky so far. As I mentioned on the offensive side with Stewart and Blade, that's where hitters do the most damage to their pull side.
Right.
But nothing really stands out to me with him right now about what's going wrong or what's going right. He's a hard guy to get a gauge on.
Well, I want to mention a couple other guys that's also been in the rotation, and there's Brendan Williams. I thought that he would be something. He came from the Mariners organization. He just can't stay healthy. He's on the 60-day IL, and Chris Paddock is with the Reds right now. Like, is there any other options? Would you say that could also be part of this rotation moving forward?
Yeah. Paddock and Lauder and Lodolo, all dealing with separate things, but they haven't really been what the Reds have needed, to put it lightly. All of them have been underperforming significantly, and the Reds won't be able to make the playoffs with that being the second half of their rotation. One guy who could make an impact in the rotation, but I like him more as a reliever, is Jose Franco. He's seen time with the major league squad in the past, but he hasn't really excelled per se. But he gets a lot of swing and misses and chase outside the zone. That's why I like him more as a reliever. I think his stuff works best in a limited time frame. He could go all out because he throws hard. Another guy who could go into the rotation is Chase Petty. I'm not really too keen on his stuff, given his struggles in both the minor leagues and the major leagues, but the Reds are running out of options, and they need somebody to step in the rotation. Brady Singer, too, hasn't been anything nearly what the Reds needed. I got to check, but I think he's running near a 5 ERA right now. Yeah, 5.32. And last year, he wasn't anything special, but you could go out there and expect like a solid outing that would keep your offense in the game. This year, it's been worse than that. I mean, he's throwing a sinker 50% of the time, and I don't think it's really working. He has a -8 run value on it. He has negative run values on all pitches. So, I mean, it seems to me like an indictment on the Reds pitching staff. They have a lot of talented arms, and they just aren't doing anything with those arms, aside from Chase Burns. It seems like there needs to be some sort of change in how they approach their preparation, how they approach arsenal development. It's just not working.
Talk a bit about your bullpen. We know that there's a couple key names that are on the IL, but they're due to come back relatively soon. We'll talk about that in a bit, but just some of the guys in your bullpen that have really shined, like Brock Burke and TJ Antone and Tony Centillion's taking over the closer role, I believe, right now. Pagan's on the IL, but just talk about what your bullpen's done to this point in the season, and are you content with it, or you think it needs to be better? Just give us your opinion on that.
To put it simply, I'm not content at all with the bullpen, and I'll do a dive on each pitcher that I think needs to be better or needs to have some sort of change to how they're approaching things. But their best reliever, in my opinion, Graham Ashcraft, he went down 2 weeks ago, I think, from now. He was placed on the 60-day IL, and he's the guy I would have liked to see take over the closer role. But obviously he can't. He's out. Sam Moll is the guy in the bullpen who I like. He's got a 3.3 ERA right now, 30 innings pitched. He struck out 33 guys. And what he's doing, to me, seems sustainable. He's been a good contributor in the bullpen, but nothing amazing. And he's been the Reds' best reliever in the largest sample size. So that's not really a sustainable bullpen to have. I mean, I guess Brock Burke has been better, but he's due for some regression. His underlying metrics aren't the most exciting. And the most exciting isn't the best way to put it, but he's running a high expected ERA in comparison to his 2.83 actual ERA. It's a 4.96 that expected ERA. And he's not really getting ground balls at a high rate either. He's limiting hard hit contact. He's in the 79th percentile in that aspect, but he's not really striking guys out either. So he's really dependent on batted ball luck right now and his defense making plays. And the Reds' defense isn't terrible, but it's not near the top of the league. Most of their guys are relatively near average, outs above average in defensive runs saved. So he's been really great for them so far, but I don't know how much I'd like to rely on his continued success the rest of the season. Tony Santillan, he took over the closer role, and he's struggled heavily. He is not a guy I want to see stay in that role. Right now, he's got a 5.46 ERA, and he's got less innings pitched than some of the other relievers. I think the Reds and Terry Francona are kind of picking up on his struggles. He can't really stay in the closer role. At least 2 weeks ago, he had more blown saves than he did saves. I think it was 3-2. But this bullpen is one that will need help at the trade deadline and maybe even sooner because they've got Caleb Ferguson, who's pitched 9 games. I think he's got a 1.83 ERA right now, something around there, but it doesn't look sustainable either for him. Pierce Johnson's coming back soon. Emilio Pagan, too. Those could be really great guys to reinforce what they have currently. And I also mentioned I like Jose Franco. I would like him to be incorporated into a relief role. I think that's where he would excel. Zach Maxwell hasn't been able to put anything together. One of the hardest throwing pitchers around, and the Reds pitching staff have just not been able to adjust him to the major leagues. I don't really know what's going on with him, but he's a guy who I was excited about heading into the season, and he's just struggled. I mentioned Chase Petty. He could see some time coming out of the bullpen, but he's struggled in the minor leagues. He's struggled in each stint he's had at the major leagues. This isn't a deep bullpen at all. They're riding on thin ice right now, and the trade deadline or the trade market is really where they'll need to reinforce it because they don't have a very strong farm system right now.
Did you mention about Chase Petty? He was considered a top 100 prospect throughout the industry, and he was part of the Sonny Gray trade. And a lot of people thought that the stuff he had, like he was throwing hard, but he hasn't put it all together. Like, how do you profile him? And like you said, he's running out of options as well, right? Do you classify him as a starting pitcher, or do you think long term he's a reliever?
I don't think the answer is as clear as we would like because he's a 5-pitch guy. He has the stamina to be a starter, but like I mentioned before, it's never really worked. In the minors, he's always struggled. He struggled in his brief time at the major leagues. So, yeah, I think I would definitely be open to experimenting with him in a reliever role. Because right now I could read you off some of the things he did in the minors as a starter, but he didn't really lit hard contact or barrels. He didn't limit average exit velocity. Hitters hit it at 90.3 miles per hour on average. They own a 353 xWOBA. And his arsenal has some redeeming qualities. He throws hard, like you mentioned, and like I said, it's a 5-pitch arsenal. He could play those pitches off each other in tunnel, but I always thought it was a little bold to have him as a top 100 prospect because I just don't think he has the stuff to be considered or regarded that highly.
Hunter Green underwent surgery to remove bone chips in his right elbow, and there's finally a rehab assignment in sight for him. He threw his first bullpen session at the Reds facility on the 26th of May, and he's due to get ramping up towards rehab games. And you got Pierce Johnson, who was also there was also an update on him. He's been on the injured list since May 30th with elbow inflammation, and he'll throw bullpen sessions. And Emilio Pagan, the guy who's been closing most of the games for you this year, your primary closer, is he was carted off with a hamstring injury. He's going to face live hitters in New York for the first time, and then Ellie De La Cruz, there was an update on him as well. Could you just fill everybody in on what's going on with those guys and when they might be back, and what the update was that Terry Francona gave?
Right. So with Hunter Green, you mentioned his first bullpen sessions, but he's also faced hitters again in a simulated game and live BP on June 13th. He's set to begin a rehab assignment with the ACL club soon, and actually today is on June 18th set to pitch 3 innings. So I think we could see him back slightly after the All-Star break. I think he could plausibly return before then, but I'd prefer the Reds don't rush him. I mean, with how much talent he has and the nature of the injury, you really don't want to risk a reset with his rehab. Pierce Johnson, his expected return right now is tomorrow. I think that's a little bold, but like you mentioned, he faced hitters in a simulated game on June 15th. He's scheduled to pitch in a rehab assignment today, also June 18th, for AAA. And getting him back will be a huge help to the Reds bullpen. He's a guy who is an anchor, especially given the rest of the bullpen struggles. And TJ Antone is a guy who's done a great job at picking up the slack since he's went out. He's been pretty good in the 17 or so innings he's pitched. But getting Pierce Johnson will be really huge for that bullpen. Also coming back soon, without a set-in-stone concrete return date, but sometime late June, early July should be Emilio Pagan. He had an MRI June 13th earlier this week, which provided the all clear for him to face hitters. He had a bullpen session on June 16th, and he's set to pitch in a simulated game tomorrow at Yankee Stadium. And given Santillan struggles Ashcraft's injury, who's not set to return until the second half, getting Pagan back will be essential for the Reds to stay afloat. They need a guy who can close out games, and he's been a reliable closer in the past at the start of the season, like you said. And Ellie De La Cruz is perhaps the most impactful guy currently injured. He could turn the Reds lineup back right. He could up the ship. He was one of their best hitters, aside from Blade, before he got injured, and he took a huge step forward from this year from last. But he's expected to return sometime next week. June 23rd is the expected date that Francona gave us. He's been running the bases. He's taken grounders in batting practice. That all happened on June 15th, and he did so again the following day. And he's set to begin a rehab assignment tomorrow with AAA Louisville. Again, I think the June 23rd return date is a little optimistic. I think he'll need a bit more time rehabbing given the nature of a hamstring strain, but he should be back by the end of the month, and he'll be a huge part of getting the Reds offense back to where it needs to be.
Awesome. Good
Okay.
stuff.
Yeah. No, just saying. So my question here is, when you look at this team right now, they're 35 and 38. They're only 3 games under 500, and they were off to a great start, and they've been struggling a bit lately, and injuries definitely played a role of that. Is there a bit of urgency to try to bounce back at this point, or it's at the point that you just want to play some baseball, see where things go, and just go from there? But what do they need to do to get back on track?
I think they need to go to the trade market before the trade deadline's approaching. And while obviously didn't work out last year, I'd like to see some sort of move like the Giants did last year with Rafael Devers in early June. It doesn't have to be blockbuster, but they need to reinforce that lineup with someone who can slide into the outfield or the designated hitter role because they're not getting enough from Eugenio Suarez or Blake Dunn, who are going out there nearly every day. They need a reliever. I'd go for two. You can never have too few relievers,
Right.
especially if you're trying to play competitive baseball. And they need another starting pitcher. There are a lot of gaping holes in that rotation. And I think it's really great that they've stayed afloat for this long, but they're really bordering on the edge of a massive collapse if they don't have some reinforcements soon. And those guys coming back from the injury list will be huge. I think the need for a hitter is mitigated, not completely, but in a substantial amount by Ellie coming back soon. And like I said, Eugenio Suarez looks a bit more comfortable at the plate. If he could get things going, that fixes nearly all the problems the offense has had. Two guys who are going to be big sluggers and staples in that lineup. And the bullpen, too, with Pagan coming back soon, that should give Santillan an opportunity to reset. He won't be relied on in the closer role. Pierce Johnson coming back, and I'd like to see Jose Franco called up to pitch from the bullpen. So that leaves us with the starting rotation, which I think is the biggest need that Cincinnati needs to target. And I haven't looked too much at which starters will be rentals at the deadline. And it's really hard to tell right now because a lot of teams are in the Red situation where they're bordering on, hey, are we going to be a wild card team or are we going to collapse and be sellers? But as we approach the end of the month, I'd like to see them make a trade sooner rather than later for a starting pitcher.
When you talk about the trade deadline, because it's in August 1st, like how soon would you say that they should go after? Like is Nick Kroll the GM or the president of baseball operation? Does he operate that way? That some teams will try to be a little bit aggressive to go address a need, so they want to try to stay afloat and try to compete.
Yeah, I don't view the Reds front office or Nick Kroll as someone who likes to get that far ahead of themselves and make a trade, especially a big trade, that soon before the deadline. Last year, even approaching the deadline, I feel like the team didn't really reinforce the way it needed to. And they still managed to make the playoffs, but they
Right.
were easily swept by the Dodgers. They didn't put up too much of a fight. And they're a young team. That was the experience they needed. But right now, I think Nick Kroll and Brad Meador, the GM, will have to go out of their comfort zone and make a move as soon as possible. Because the Reds really are playing with fire here, seeing how long they can stay in this wild card race with their current squad and roster construction.
You mentioned Jose Franco should be called up to help with the bullpen, and recently Edwin Arroyo was also called up to help contribute. And who are some other prospects do you believe that could call up and help this team, or that are close to being major league ready in your system?
There's one guy that really comes to mind, but I have two that I'd like to talk about. But Hector Rodriguez, who's killing it in AAA right now, I think that could be the most impactful bat that the Reds could promote right now. At AAA, he's hitting .281 with a .358 on base percentage. He's got an .872 OPS. And this is through 69 games played and 278 at bats. He's been healthy the whole season. He's got 78 hits in total, 12 of which are doubles. He's got 4 triples and 15 homers. He's struck out 61 times, so nothing too crazy. And he's stolen 4 bases. And like I said, given Blake Dunn struggles with the bat, Eugenio Suarez struggles with the bat, Hector Rodriguez could come up and platoon with them, get his first taste at the major leagues, while also hopefully adjusting quickly to major league pitching and giving the Reds offense that spark that they need. I think that if he is going to be called up, it will be soon. I don't think that the Reds would call him up in July. If they're still in the race, it would have to be sometime at the end of this month or towards September call-ups, maybe August. That's just how I've seen them operate in the past. But I think he could be a really nice experiment to see how he adjusts to Major League pitching and if he can be an impact bat. Because he's done so every year in the minor leagues. He's proven himself. I would have promoted him already if I was part of the Reds front office. I honestly don't see what they're waiting for given the offensive struggles of their Major League squad right now. There are a few other guys in the minor league system who, if they set themselves right, could see a call-up later in the year, but Cam Collier struggled so far at Double-A. He's at a 679 OPS. He's not ready yet, it doesn't seem to me. We already talked about Jose Franco. Carlos Jorge is another outfielder that could potentially be an impact bat on the Major League squad, but he's more interesting and a harder promotion to get behind than Hector Rodriguez, because this year in 50 games played, he's got an 876 OPS. That's at Double-A. A 415 on base percentage. He's hit 6 homers, 2 doubles, 2 triples. But in 2025 and 2024, his OPS didn't crack 700 at high A. So I wouldn't view him as a guy the Reds want to rush. He's their number 16 overall prospect. He's 22 right now. There's no reason to throw him into the fire of a major league lineup that's struggling when he's just finding his footing for the first time in the minor leagues. Like I mentioned earlier, there aren't really all that many major league ready bats or position players in the Reds top 30, and there's not really that many position players in general. Julian Aguilar, their number 17 prospect, could be an interesting promotion. This year at high A, he had a 3.52 ERA in 6 games. But at Triple-A, where he started 6 games, he's running a 5.55 ERA, a 1-2 record in 24.1 innings pitched. And he had a brief stint with the Major League team in 2024, where he had a 6.25 ERA in 7 games started, only struck out 19 batters in 31.2 innings pitched. But he's in Triple-A right now. Like I said, he's one of the closest arms they have to being Major League ready. At some point, you just got to take a risk with how Louder, Low-to-Low, Paddock, and Singer are struggling right now.
I want to ask you about, he's not really a prospect anymore. He's 27. He was released by the Rockies. Michael Toglia is hitting 259 with you guys, with your AAA club, 17 home runs, 51 RBIs with a 902 OPS. Is there a reason like why is it just there's no space for him, or isn't he somebody that you maybe could help be a designated hitter for you, or just curious your thoughts on that?
I think he should definitely be given a shot with a Major League squad, like you said, in a designated hitter role. His primary position's first base, and the Reds are pretty logjam there. They don't need that. Right. But Suarez has been struggling. Why not give Toglia a shot at the DH role? He's been raking at AAA, like you said. His ex-WOBA 379 is in the 90th percentile there. He's got a 529 expected slugging, which is the 94th percentile. His average exit velocity of 91.3 miles an hour is in the 85th percentile. He's barreling balls at a 16.1% rate, 94th percentile. And he's hitting the ball hard, 95 plus, 50.6% of the time. He's got Major League experience, and he wasn't exactly setting the world on fire there. But he's a guy who deserves a shot, I would say, of the Reds designated hitter role. Who knows? Maybe he's like J.J. Bleday. Toglia is only 27. Bleday is 28. Who's to say he doesn't get promoted, or he gets promoted and isn't like Bleday was? Right. He's tearing it up in AAA. Why not?
Talk about Terry Francona for a second here. And he was hired last year. And in his first go-around, the team made the playoffs in the final day of the season, right, over the Mets, of course.
Right.
And now you look at this right now. You look at this right now, and you look at the situation where they're at right now. Like you said, like with Francona, how important is it for him to mentor these young guys? It's a relatively young squad,
Right.
and looking at this team, you got Ellie, who's was off to a fantastic start, of course, until he got injured. And then you had Blade, he's off to a great start. Sal Stewart, Rookie of the Year candidate. Like, how important is he to that franchise, especially when you're trying to win?
Oh, his mentorship can't be replaced. He's been around the game for so long. He has so much knowledge, and like you said, the squad is really young, and he's been a guy who's helped motivate them, who's helped navigate them towards the energy they need to be successful as major leaguers. Um, with that being said, I think he could benefit more from being in a bench coach role. I think his experience is a little outdated in the new day age of baseball, where we have a lot more technology, a lot more reliance on the metrics, velocity, exit velocity, um, things that were always important given the eye test, but we never really had concrete ways of measuring them. And I don't know if this is his decision or if it's coming up from the higher ups, but there's been too much reliance on certain guys. Like we were just talking about, there's no reason that Toglia should still be in AAA. He should have a chance to prove himself. Um, and there's not really much to do there without knowing if Francona's even having a say in these decisions. But there just isn't the approach that they're going with isn't working anymore. They got off to a great start, but without Ellie De La Cruz, it's not working. And he'll be back soon, so we'll see if he truly does right the ship. But Francona's wise words and knowledge can only go so far. You need someone who can interpret the data, who can interpret each opposing squad's approach, and give it to the young players who have been coming up in an age where they've only been exposed to these numbers and not the eye test.
Talk about the NL Central a little bit. And it's been a pretty competitive division thus far this year, with all teams almost over 500. You guys currently sit 3 games out of a wild card. So, what are your thoughts on the NL Central and what should we expect going forward?
Yeah, what a pleasant surprise that division's been. We always knew that the Brewers were going to be at the top. They're a great squad. They have so much young talent. Their front office is one of the best, if not the best in the game, up there with the Rays and the Dodgers. But I don't think anybody, including myself, expected the Cardinals to be 8 games above 500 at this point in June.
Yeah.
Yeah.
JJ Weatherholt has been a godsend for them, and they've had contributions from other players who we didn't necessarily expect. And they're really only running a plus 11 run differential right now. But they've been a pleasure to watch, and they've given everyone in the league a run for their money. And I think they could plausibly end up in one of those wild card spots come season's end. The Cubs, they're another squad that I expected to be in the playoffs coming from the start of the season. They started off hot and had somewhat of a collapse recently, but I mean, Bregman just hasn't been contributing. They've dealt with a lot of injuries to their pitching rotation, but they're a team and an organization who are going to reinforce come the trade deadline. They're going to make splashes, and they're going to go in, especially in a year looming before the competitive balance agreement is up. I think they're going to make a significant run towards the playoffs. I think they'll end up with a wild card spot. Um, and it'll be really interesting and fun to see what sort of splashes they make in the next month. The Pirates, I honestly expected the Pirates to finish third in the Central. Um, I always viewed them favorably, especially after they traded for Brandon Lau and Ryan O'Hearn. But to be honest, I thought that a lot of their success would come in the second half of the season. I didn't think they'd get off to the start they have now. And they slowed down a little. Connor Griffin made his debut. He got injured. But I think they've exceeded a lot of people's expectations. I thought that given their um, urgency, you could say, this past offseason with signings that we haven't seen from them in years past, I thought the trade deadline would be where they got their contributors. But Lau's been excellent. O'Hearn's been excellent. Their rotation, Skeens hasn't even been what we've seen from Skeens, and he's still been great. Ashcraft has been otherworldly. What a season he's having.
Yeah.
But they've just been a great squad. I would like to see them go out, potentially have a reunion with Aroldis Chapman if the Red Sox deal him at the deadline. But their squad too, where I don't know if they're going to finish the season in a wild card spot. I don't know where they're going to finish in the Central, but they're a good team. They've got a plus 14 run differential right now, so they're also bordering on being uber competitive and riding the line between playoffs and not. But they've been exciting to watch. And then you see the Reds in last place, and they're still a team with a ton of potential. They've got a negative 52 run differential, but we've went over all the injuries the squad has had, how they could boost their playoff chances with trades. I mean, they've been without Ellie for close to 3 weeks now, and there's just so much that could happen in the coming weeks. It's really hard to say if the Reds will finish in that wild card spot. I wouldn't be surprised if 2 of the 3 wild card teams come from the NL Central. The Phillies, obviously, I think are going to have one of those spots if they don't overtake the Braves at some point in the season. But the Padres have been on a skid. The Diamondbacks, 2 games above 500, but the Cardinals look better. The Cubs, I think they'll end up being better once they make a trade splash. So I don't think it's that crazy to say that the NL Central has been the most competitive division in baseball so far.
If you look at your division right now, and you mentioned all the teams, every team has its ups and flows, right? For sure. And we talked about St. Louis, right? St. Louis is off to some scorching hot start, which is that they're probably the most surprising team in baseball. Probably them and the White Sox, if you want to look at the AL that way. But could you see St. Louis hold up? And because there has been rumors that they might still trade some of their guys from their bullpen, and some of the rentals, but could you see that happening? And could you see the Reds doing a trade within the division like they did in the past?
That's a harder question to answer, just because I'm not crazy up to date with how the Cardinals farm system is looking, because I think that will be what truly motivates how they approach the deadline. But I mean, if they stay 8 games above 500, 10 games above 500, I can't imagine that they would sell off the rentals unless they're getting some sort of major league ready talent back. But that's a trade that wouldn't really make sense for both sides, giving away major league talent for major league talent if you're both looking to make the playoffs. So if they keep playing the way they are, they're 6-4 in their last 10, and it's been like that consistently throughout the season, just winning a little bit more than you need to stay above 500. I don't think that they'll be sellers at the deadline. I don't know that they'll necessarily be buyers either. They might just ride it out. But we're still so far off, and they're not in danger of collapsing anytime soon that it's really hard to forecast what they might do. And in terms of the Reds making an interdivision trade, I don't think it would be out of the question in any other year. But all of these teams could plausibly steal a wild card spot, and I don't think they'd want to help a division rival who could get ahead of them in the standings and overtake them.
Could you see a reunion with Aroldis Chapman back to the Reds where he started his career in 2010?
I could definitely, and I think that would be game-changing for the Reds bullpen, because Chapman, ever since joining the Red Sox, has been one of, if not the best closers in baseball, up there with Mason Miller. And Louis Varland has been, I
Of
feel like, an
course.
under the radar guy, but
Yeah,
absolutely
Oh.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I just struggle with seeing who the Reds would give up for him because they don't have a deep farm system, as I mentioned, and I'd rather them use their prospects that are enticing to other front offices to get a starting pitcher, because I think that Pagan will do a good enough job in that closer role once he comes back. If they do get Ashcraft back early enough in the second half, he could be a great setup guy, a great closer if Pagan isn't doing his job. But I think a Chapman reunion is definitely plausible. And I think it would be a really great move that they could make if they somehow find the prospect capital or negotiate a deal that works for both sides.
Well, to wrap this up, this is probably an important question because there's a reason why I want to ask you this, because we haven't seen much extension so far during the Nick Carl era. Right now, I believe it's just Hunter Green, I think, at the moment. Who do you think could be next in line for an extension? Because I do see that they tried to attempt to sign Ellie De La Cruz long term in the offseason, and he rejected it. Apparently, what the reports were told that he got the richest offer in Reds history. So I would like to hear what your thoughts about that, and who do you think, besides Ellie, they'll try to extend?
Yeah. Just quickly, they have to try for Ellie again. They can't just accept no. And I think he's still in his pre-arb years, so
Right.
we don't even know what the lay of the land will be after these new CBA negotiations. So it's not out of the question that they eventually get something done with him. In terms of other guys, Chase Burns is the obvious answer. You've got to try to get something done.
I'm with you. Yeah.
I don't know if they'll wait to start negotiating it, but he's already one of the best pitchers in baseball. He's going to get a hefty deal if he gets to free agency, so it's going to take a big offer to retain him. But like I said with Ellie, the CBA negotiations are coming up. Who knows what will happen with salary cap, whatnot, what sort of things the player union and MLB can agree on. I think the most likely extension candidate would be JJ Bleday, because he's not going to get one of those big hefty deals given just 2 months of elite production. But if the Reds and Nick Krall truly believe that he can keep up this level of production, if it's sustainable, I think he's a clear-cut guy that you have to try. Like 3-4 year extension, probably get up to 20 mil AAV if the Reds are willing to go there. Yeah, but those are the guys who come to mind. I don't really see anyone else who I'd be jumping the gun to extend on the roster.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's really not that many guys I would extend prematurely.
How do you look at TJ Friedel as a franchise center fielder? Because I know that he doesn't get talked about enough, very underrated. Thought that he would take the next step. He hasn't really done that. Do you think he's still a long-term guy for this organization?
Fredone, okay. I mean, I don't know if he's a long-term solution per se, but like you said, he hasn't really found his footing. But I mean, like, there's only so much you can see in a limited time span. I think that Bleday has a better shot of sticking around, even though he's 28 already. But
Yeah.
you see that level of production, and it's hard to just let it go. I'm sure Bleday has positive feelings about the Reds. It's where he finally started to succeed. I think he's the outfield piece that will continue to stay as the franchise centerpiece.
Well, Mason, we appreciate you being here. Great insight, great information. Hope to have you back in the future. But where can we find you in social media and everywhere else?
You can find me on X and you can find me at Just Baseball Media, where I write about the Reds, and on my own website, FBC Reports. I think my handle on X is also FBC Reports, but you could just look up Mason Linken and you'll find me there.
Awesome, man. This was a great episode, and we enjoyed having you and talking about the Reds. It was, it was interesting stuff, man. You guys have a great young team there, so good luck for the rest of the season, man.
Thank you, and thank you, Rob and Rocky, for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, we appreciate you once again, and we will place the description below where you can find Mason Linken's work with this fine job. But till next time, take care, be kind to each other. Signing off for the Sports Avenue Twisted Podcast on Thursday, June 18th, 2026.
Sports Avenue Twisted Podcast. Rob and Rocky talks everything sports.